Now,
because
why are you doing
this? Especially never before in my lifetime have the freedoms of Australians and people in Western democracies been threatened like they are today. Never before. So it's what did the great speech of Ronald Reagan, what he said, freedom, we don't inherit it. It doesn't come through down in our bloodstream. It doesn't get handed from one generation to the next. We've got to stand up and we've got to fight for it. Mm-hmm. And now's the time for people in Australia that are concerned about how our freedoms and our liberties are being eroded and taken away to stand up and have their voice count.
Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters around the world. It is your boy Crucial, aka the Esoteric Noetic, aka the Chocolate Nubian Soul Brother. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, click on the bell, tell your friends, tell your mom, drop us some comments, let us know what it is. Let's get it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about what is going on in the world right now. What is going on in the world can be summed up in one word: menticide. What is menticide? Menticide, defined, is the systematic effort to break down the beliefs and allegiances of a person by physical or psychological means in order to substitute one's own, also called brainwashing. It has been made possible mainly because of modern discoveries in psychology and the use of the mass media. The etymology is from men's mind, sidium, a killing of the mind. And that is what we are seeing transpire in the world right now. People can withstand a lot of difficulty, ladies and gentlemen. People are robust. However, people are also like cockroaches. You hit them with a newspaper and they die. If you hit people with brainwashing, menticide, you take away their religion, you take away their perspective on reality, and they crumble. Boom shakalaka. Ladies and gentlemen, just recently I found out that an Australian MP known as Craig Kelly, one of the few that has been standing up against the narrative, was deplatformed, was taken off of Facebook and taken off of Instagram, which in the 21st century is like the 18th century town hall. People go to these platforms to speak their truth. People aren't even allowed to voice their opinions now. Freedom of speech, freedom of information is being suppressed. Why was this guy deplatformed? He was told that he was spreading misinformation when all he was doing was posting scientific articles in regards to the narrative by leading experts, mind you. But apparently Facebook had decided that the information was going against the narrative. Therefore, deplatformed MP Craig Kelly, one of the few people that is trying to pass a bill to make the boom shakalaka passport not mandatory. One of the few people that is trying to prevent our freedoms from being eroded is one of the few people that has decided to stand on the river of truth, and though is being compelled by so many people around the world to say, I will comply, to move, is standing on this river and saying, no, mate, you move. I'm True Blue. I'm Craig Kelly. I'm not moving at all. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we're at. But you know what? I want to talk about ways to combat some of the things that are going on at the moment. I want to talk about conversational jujitsu. One of the things that I'm seeing around Australia is people being accosted by the popo, the police officers. Now, for those of you that know me, know that I am not a big fan of the popo, and it's not because I'm black. It's because I actually believe in human rights, and I do not like human rights being stamped on by the popo or by anyone for that matter. Now, a lot of people say, oh, look, fair go. The police are just doing their job. Well, if your job is to apply immoral laws, then you should get another job. Now, look, I'm not saying all police are bad, but the police officers that you find within the governmental system at the moment are typically people that are enforcing these laws, these unconstitutional laws. These laws that violate your natural rights. These laws that compel you to wear a mask. These laws that compel you in states like Western Australia to be forcibly boom shakalaka'd, which is about, as far as I'm concerned, the most immoral thing that you can do. And of course, people will still use this legalese system to justify it. So you know what you got to do? You got to use their own weapons against them. Use their legalese against these guys. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a situation where, and I've experienced this a few times, you know, where you're accosted by a police officer, look, mate, where's your mask? Officer, I have a medical exemption. Well, I'm going to have to see your medical exemption. I'm afraid you got to give me a legitimate excuse. Now, here's the situation. Here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. If you were at, and this applies to all the states in Australia, and this typically is the case within Commonwealth countries. So this is going to apply in the UK, apply in New Zealand. You might want to check that, but this is definitely the case in Australia, mate. You are not required. In fact, it's actually an offense for a police officer to ask you what your medical exemption is, or to ask you to wear a mask. But look, let's just stick to the exemption at the moment. Like, a lot of people believe that they need to provide their medical exemption if they're not wearing a mask. The reality is, if a police officer asks you where your medical exemption is, they are committing an offense. And what you do, as soon as you're asked, look, mate, why aren't you wearing a mask? You tell them, I have a medical exemption. At that point, if they ask you, where's your medical exemption? You let a police officer know that, look, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you're actually committing an offense simply by asking me what my medical exemption is. I mean, unless you're a medical officer, you have no right inquiring about that. And granted, you may not be aware of this. I'm going to assume that, give you the benefit of the doubt. And I'm willing to ignore this offense if you just let me go, if you just forget this whole event. But if they persist and they want to see your medical exemption, if they persist and want your address, you first of all let them know, look, you're giving this information under duress, but you will be pressing charges. And ladies and gentlemen, this is something that does actually work, but it requires one thing: courage. Most police officers realize that most people don't know their rights, therefore don't have them. And more importantly, they realize that most people aren't going to pursue this stuff. If you are willing to pursue this, if you're willing to press charges on these officers, you will find that they will take a step back. Many police officers have been sued for committing these offenses, for asking people for their medical exemption. Many police officers have been sued for asking people for their address. Now, granted, practically speaking, granted, you have the right not to give this information out. Typically what we're finding, and this is something that I've noticed over the last few months, is that people are being arrested. You're making life difficult for yourself if you resist arrest, if you go through that. So just comply. And this is practical. This is the practical advice. If all of this stuff does not deter a police officer, just comply, give them your address, but let them know that you are giving it to them under duress. And at that point, you do the necessary paperwork. You file a complaint against the police officer. Make sure you get their name and the badge number. They're always required to give that information out to you. And granted, they'll give it to you as if they're not doing anything wrong. Yeah, mate, sure, you can have my badge number. I'm just following my orders, not doing anything wrong. But believe me, if you pursue this thing, you will see results. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do at the moment. A lot of us are saying it's too much work. I don't want to have to go through the hassle of resisting any of the laws that are implemented. But ladies and gentlemen, if you keep on complying to these ridiculous laws, and if you simply excuse what these police officers are doing by saying they're just following orders, you are going to find yourself in a situation where this is the norm. You are living in a world, in fact, this is where we're at. This is how we are where we're at. Through menticide, ladies and gentlemen. 60, 70 years ago, if the establishment had tried to implement what it's implementing now, it wouldn't have stood a chance because people had an understanding of their rights. But over time, people have digressed to a lack of understanding of their rights. people have lost their courage, and because we've just slowly capitulated to these egregious acts of violence by police officers where they coerce you into divulging your information, and we don't stand up against it. Now these officers are just doing this without giving it a second thought. So once again, simply put, if you were asked why you're not wearing a mask, if you happen to be in a place like, well, it could be anywhere, Australia, Canada. I'm not sure what the laws are, but know your rights. Do some research. Try to understand the legalese. You will find that typically you do not need to comply if you have a medical exemption. And if you are asked for this, let them know politely that you're not required to give it to them. And if they persist, let them know that they are committing an offense, and you provide your details, but take legal action. Best thing to do is just to let them know, look, you're committing offense, and you're probably not aware of this, but I will be pressing charges, I will be suing you, but I'm willing to let this thing go if you just, if you forget this entire event. But make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, you do not have to comply to these unlawful mandates, and you need to stand by your rights. There's some conversational jiu-jitsu for you. Ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, peace out, keep it real. Don't drive and text. Don't succumb to the menticide that is taking place. Be courageous, be bold, stand up for your rights, and be sure to check out my group. In fact, I just got a message from the group now. It's called the Crucial Journey Podcast. This is on Telegram. You can check out the link below. You can check us out on Hive, or you can check us out on all the other social media platforms. Until next time, Surya Namaskara, Namaste, Boom Shakalaka, Krishul. Ow!
What is liberty?
What the? Who says you can't build muscle on a vegan diet?
What's it like being a hottie in the vegan community?
There are no political solutions, only technological ones.
The economics of the system don't allow multiple competing systems to survive.
Engineering, technology, these arts of humanity, they are magic.